The security cameras captured it all, frame by frame. The footage would later become the most viral sports business crossover story of the year. A woman in a $3,000 suit pointing an aggressive finger at a man in a simple Chiefs t-shirt and jeans. Her voice, sharp and commanding, cutting through the luxury car showroom. This is a professional establishment. NFL groupies and autograph seekers are not welcome here. Security will escort you out if necessary. The man in the Chiefs shirt, calm, composed, almost amused, simply nodded and walked toward the exit without a word of protest. What Thalassa Quinn, the general manager of Premier Motors Kansas City, didn't know was that she had just kicked out the owner of the entire dealership network. Travis Kelce, three-time Super Bowl champion, future Hall of Famer, and secret investor who had purchased the business 6 months earlier for $12 million, had just been expelled from his own property. But this wasn't just about a case of mistaken identity. What happened next would expose a toxic corporate culture, trigger a social media firestorm, and force one of the NFL's biggest stars to make a decision that would change dozens of lives forever. The rain was still falling when Travis walked to his truck that Tuesday morning, but the storm brewing inside Premier Motors was just beginning. 6 hours earlier, 9:30 a.m., Travis Kelce turned off the engine of his black F-150 and sat for a moment, watching the rain streak down his windshield. Premier Motors Kansas City sprawled before him, a gleaming palace of chrome and glass that represented his first major venture outside of football. The $12 million investment had seemed solid on paper. 4 dealership locations, strong revenue streams, and what his financial team had described as established management with proven results. But the quarterly reports told a different story. Customer satisfaction scores had plummeted from 4.2 stars to 2.8 stars in just 6 months. Employee turnover had skyrocketed to 40%. Unheard of in the automotive industry. Online reviews painted a picture of aggressive sales tactics, poor customer service, and what several former employees described as a culture of fear. Today, Travis had decided to see it for himself. Pulling his baseball cap low and adjusting his simple gray Chiefs t-shirt, he stepped into the rain. No entourage, no security detail, no announcement. Just a 34-year-old athlete who happened to own the place, dressed like any other Kansas City resident seeking shelter from the weather. The showroom's interior was undeniably impressive. Polished marble floors reflected the carefully positioned luxury vehicles, BMWs, Mercedes, Lexus models arranged like precious artifacts under sophisticated lighting. The scent of new leather mixed with subtle cleaning product created an atmosphere of exclusivity and precision. Travis moved slowly between the cars, his athlete's awareness automatically cataloging the interactions around him. Near the BMW section, he observed a middle-aged salesman patiently explaining features to a young couple with a toddler. The salesman knelt down to the child's level, offering a toy car while discussing financing options with the parent. Professional, warm, effective. But the atmosphere shifted dramatically near the Mercedes display. $47,000 for a base model C-Class, and you're questioning our pricing structure? A sharp female voice cut through the showroom's ambient noise. Perhaps you should consider shopping at a Hyundai dealership if our prices don't align with your expectations. Travis turned to see a woman in her early 40s, impeccably dressed in a charcoal business suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly car pay. Her dark hair was pulled into a severe bun, and her expression carried the cold efficiency of someone accustomed to getting her way through intimidation. This had to be Thalassa Quinn, the general manager whose hiring had coincided with the dealership's declining performance. The couple she was addressing looked mortified. The husband, a man in his 50s wearing a work shirt with City Public Works embroidered on the pocket, held his wife's hand as she wiped away what appeared to be tears. "We're not questioning the price," the husband said quietly. "We just wanted to know if there were any current promotions or..." "Promotions are for customers who understand the value proposition," Thalassa interrupted. "If you need to negotiate price on a luxury, perhaps luxury isn't within your current financial parameter." Travis felt his jaw tighten. He'd grown up in a working-class family in Cleveland Heights. His father had worked construction. His mother had been a teacher. He knew exactly what it felt like to walk into a space where people made assumptions about your worth, based on your appearance or occupation. The couple exchanged glances, and began moving toward the exit. As they passed Travis, he heard the woman whisper to her husband, "I told you shouldn't have come here." Thalassa watched them leave with apparent satisfaction, then turned her attention to scanning the showroom. Her gaze settled on Travis, who was examining a red BMW M4 convertible. She approached with the predatory confidence of someone who had perfected the art of reading people's financial status within seconds. "Can I help you find something specific?" she asked, her tone carrying a subtle edge that suggested she'd already determined he wasn't a serious buyer. "Just looking," Travis replied, running his hand along the BMW's hood. "Beautiful cars you have here." "They are," Thalassa agreed, though her body language remained guarded. "Are you in the market for a new vehicle, or just browsing?" There was something in her tone, a dismissiveness, that suggested she'd categorized him as a tire kicker, or worse, a football fan hoping for an autograph. Travis had experienced this before, the way some people treated athletes as public property, rather than private individuals. "Potentially in the market," he answered honestly. "I like to take my time with big decisions." Thalassa's eyes narrowed slightly, as she took in his appearance more critically. The worn jeans, the simple t-shirt, the baseball cap. Travis could almost see her mental calculation. Not expensively dressed, not driving a luxury vehicle, probably wasting her time. "Well," she said, her voice becoming noticeably cooler, "I should mention that we do require serious inquiries only. Our sales team's time is quite valuable, and we prefer to work with qualified buyers who are ready to make immediate decisions." The insult was politely wrapped, but unmistakable. Travis had been in enough high-pressure business meetings to recognize a dismissal when he heard one. "I understand," he said calmly. "What would you consider qualified? Proof of income, credit pre-approval, evidence of serious intent." Thalassa rattled off. "We're not a place for casual browsing or—" She paused, her gaze flicking to his chief's t-shirt, "celebrity sightseeing." The final piece clicked into place. He thought he was a fan, hoping to spot an athlete or get some kind of celebrity access. The irony would have been funny if it weren't so revealing about her management style. Before Travis could respond, Thalassa's attention was diverted by a young salesman approaching with paperwork. "Ms. Quinn," the salesman said nervously, "the Henderson deal fell through. They said the financing terms were too aggressive and the financing terms were standard," Thalassa snapped. "If they couldn't afford the payment, they shouldn't have been looking at luxury vehicles. That's the third deal you've lost this month, Marcus. Perhaps you need to reconsider whether you're cut out for high-end sales." Marcus, who couldn't have been older than 25, flushed red. "I tried to explain the benefits of the extended warranty and—" "I don't want excuses," Thalassa interrupted. "I want results. Figure it out, or find another job." The exchange happened in full view of the showroom, with other customers and employees pretending not to notice the public humiliation. Travis watched Marcus walk away, shoulders slumped, and felt something harden his chest. This wasn't just poor customer service. It was toxic leadership that was poisoning the entire workplace culture. Thalassa turned back to Travis, apparently considering their conversation concluded. "As I was saying, unless you're here to make a serious purchase, I'd prefer that you—" "Actually," Travis interrupted, his voice remaining calm but carrying new authority, "I think I'll take another look around. Thanks for your time." He walked away before she could respond, but he could feel her eyes following, suspicion growing. As he moved through the showroom, Travis noticed other concerning patterns. Employees who avoided eye contact with management, customers who seemed intimidated rather than welcome, sales tactics that bordered on aggressive rather than helpful. After 30 minutes of observation, Travis had seen enough. He headed toward the exit, already planning his next move. As he reached the door, Thalassa's voice called out sharply, "Excuse me!" Travis turned, expecting perhaps a business card or information packet. Instead, he found himself facing the moment that would change everything. Thalassa Quinn stood 10 feet away, her posture rigid with authority and barely contained irritation. Around the showroom, conversations quiet, as employees and customers sensed the tension building between the well-dressed manager and the casually clothed visitor. "I need to ask you something directly," Thalassa said, her voice carrying across the marble floors. "Are you here to purchase a vehicle, or are you wasting our time?" Travis felt every eye in the showroom turn toward them. A young couple near the Lexus display paused their conversation with a salesperson. Marcus, still smarting from his earlier public reprimand, glanced up from his paperwork. Even the detailing staff visible through the service bay windows seemed to sense something significant happening. "I'm not wasting anyone's time," Travis replied evenly. "I'm a potential customer looking at your inventory." "Really?" Thalassa's tone sharpened. "Because in my 15 years of automotive sales, I've learned to spot people who are here for the wrong reason. Autograph seekers, social media influencers looking for content, NFL groupies hoping to catch a glimpse of their favorite players." The accusation hung in the air like a challenge. Travis could have ended it immediately, revealed his identity, produced his business cards, called his attorney. Instead, he found himself curious about how far Thalassa would push this confrontation. "And you think I'm one of those people?" he asked. "I think you've been wandering around my showroom for 40 minutes without speaking to a single salesperson about finance, without asking about specific features, without demonstrating any serious intent to purchase," Thalassa said. "I think you're here to gawk, not to buy." Her showroom. The phrase wasn't lost on Travis, though he kept his expression neutral. "Maybe I'm just careful about big purchases," he suggested. "Careful customers ask questions. They request test drive. They discuss their needs with our sales team." Thalassa stepped closer, her voice dropping but remaining audible to the gathered audience. "What they don't do is lurk around taking pictures with their phones." Travis realized she'd misinterpreted his earlier movement as him trying to take stealth photos, when he'd actually been observing employee interactions and customer service protocols. "I haven't taken any pictures," he said. "I saw you with your phone out near the BMW section," Thalassa countered. "And frankly, I'm tired of people treating my dealership like a tourist attraction. This is a place of business, not a fan experience." The word "my" struck Travis again. For someone who was an employee, Thalassa certainly seemed to feel proprietary about the business. Marcus approached hesitantly, perhaps sensing an opportunity to intervene. "Ms. Quinn, maybe I could help this gentleman find—" "No." Thalassa cut him off without taking her eyes off Travis. "I'll handle this." She turned back to Travis, her professional facade finally dropping to reveal undisguised hostility. "I'm going to be very clear with you. This is a professional establishment serving serious buyers. NFL groupies, autograph seekers, and curiosity browsers are not welcome. I'm asking you to leave voluntarily before I have to involve security." The ultimatum reverberated through the showroom. A few customers near the exit quietly slipped out, apparently uncomfortable with the escalating confrontation. The sales staff exchanged worried glances, clearly recognizing that their manager was creating a potentially explosive situation. Travis looked around the showroom, at the luxury vehicles he owned, at the employees whose paychecks he ultimately signed, at the business he'd invested millions to acquire. For a moment, he considered the satisfaction of revealing exactly who he was and watching Thalassa's face transform from arrogance to horror. But something held him back. Perhaps it was professional curiosity about how far she would go. Perhaps it was the athlete's instinct to gather complete information before making a decisive move. Or perhaps it was the recognition that this moment would reveal more about Thalassa's character and management style than any background check could provide. "You're asking me to leave?" he said, his tone still remarkably calm. "I'm telling you to leave," Thalassa corrected. "You have 60 seconds before I call security." The threat was delivered with the confidence of someone accustomed to wielding power without challenge. Around the showroom, Travis could see the effect of Thalassa's management style written on every face: fear, discomfort, resignation. This wasn't leadership, it was bullying with a business suit. Travis pulled out his phone, and Thalassa immediately stiffened. "If you're thinking about recording this conversation for social media," she warned, "I should inform you that this is private property and—" "I'm just checking my messages," Travis said mildly, though he was actually opening his contacts list to find his attorney's number. 60 seconds, you said? 50 now, Thalassa replied, crossing her arms. Travis pocketed his phone and looked around the showroom one final time. He mentally noted which employees had witnessed the confrontation, which customers had been present, and how the entire dynamic of the space had shifted around Thalassa's authoritarian presence. "All right," he said finally, "I'll go." The simplicity of his response seemed to catch Thalassa off guard. She'd apparently expected arguments, protest, or demands to speak to her superior. Instead, Travis Nelson Kelce, three-time Super Bowl champion, All-Pro tight end, and owner of Premier Motors Kansas City, simply walked toward the exit. As he reached the glass doors, Travis turned back for one last look. Thalassa stood triumphant in the center of her domain, already turning to address the sales staff with what appeared to be a lecture about maintaining professional standards. Marcus caught Travis's eye and mouthed, "I'm sorry," while shaking his head in apparent disgust at his manager's behavior. Travis nodded slightly and stepped into the rain, but as he walked to his truck, Travis was already making plans. His phone buzzed with messages from his business manager, his attorney, and his financial advisor. Within the hour, Premier Motors Kansas City would receive some very unexpected visitors. The confrontation was over, but the reckoning was just beginning. As Travis drove away, he couldn't help but smile grimly at the irony. Thalassa Quinn had just kicked the owner out of his own business while declaring it her personal domain. She was about to learn exactly who really owned the place. By 2:30 p.m., the rain had stopped, but the storm at Premier Motors was just beginning. Travis Kelce returned to the dealership in a black Lincoln Navigator, followed by a BMW sedan carrying 3 passengers: James Mitchell, his business attorney, Sarah Chen, his financial advisor, and David Rodriguez, the executive accountant who managed his investment portfolio. The convoy pulled into the visitor parking area with the quiet authority of people who didn't need to announce their importance. Inside the showroom, Thalassa Quinn was conducting what appeared to be a staff meeting near the Mercedes display. Her voice carried the sharp edge of someone delivering ultimatums rather than guidance. "Customer complaints are up 18% this quarter," she was saying to the gathered sales team. "That's unacceptable. I expect everyone to tighten their closing techniques and stop being so accommodating to price negotiation." Marcus raised his hand tentatively. "Ms. Quinn, some of the complaints mentioned feeling pressured during the sales process. Maybe if we—" "Pressure is what closes deals," Thalassa interrupted. "Luxury car buyers expect confidence, not hand-holding. If they wanted gentle sales tactics, they'd shop at a Honda dealership." The conversation stopped abruptly as Travis walked through the front entrance, followed by his professional team. This time, there was no mistaking the change in dynamics. James Mitchell's $5,000 suit and briefcase immediately commanded attention. Sarah Chen's polished demeanor and tablet full of financial documents suggested serious business. David Rodriguez carried himself with the quiet authority of someone accustomed to high-stakes corporate environment. But it was Travis himself who drew every eye. Still dressed casually, but now flanked by obvious legal and financial representation, he moved through the showroom with the confidence of someone who belonged there. Thalassa's expression shifted from confusion to alarm as she recognized the man she'd expelled just hours earlier. "Can I help you?" she asked, though her voice lacked the aggressive certainty she'd displayed that morning. "I think we need to talk," Travis replied simply. "If this is about this morning's misunderstanding," Thalassa began, but James Mitchell stepped forward, extending a business card with practiced precision. "Ms. Quinn, I'm James Mitchell, representing KC Ventures LLC. This is Sarah Chen, financial advisor, and David Rodriguez, executive accountant. We're here regarding the ownership transition of Premier Motors Kansas City." The words hit the showroom like a thunderclap. Sales staff, who had been pretending not to listen, suddenly stopped all pretense. Customers browsing nearby vehicles paused their conversation. Even the service department staff, visible through the window, seemed to sense that something momentous was happening. "Ownership transition," Thalassa repeated, her professional composure beginning to crack. "I wasn't informed of any—" "The transition occurred 6 months ago," Sarah Chen interjected, consulting her tablet. "KC Ventures acquired controlling interest in Premier Motors through a private equity arrangement. Perhaps you weren't properly briefed by previous management." Travis watched Thalassa's face as the implications began to register. The color drained from her cheeks as she processed what she was hearing. "KC Ventures," she repeated slowly. "And you represent—" "Travis Kelce," James Mitchell said, with professional directness, "who is the principal owner of KC Venture and, therefore, the majority stakeholder in Premier Motors Kansas City and its 3 sister locations." The revelation struck the showroom like a physical force. Marcus dropped the paperwork he'd been holding. A customer near the BMW section actually gasped audibly. The young couple who had been browsing Lexus models turned to stare openly at the unfolding drama. But it was Thalassa's reaction that would be remembered by everyone present. Her face went through a series of expressions: disbelief, recognition, horror, and finally, a desperate attempt to regain control of a situation that had just spiraled completely beyond her reach. "Mr. Kelce," she said, her voice now artificially bright with forced professionalism. "What a surprise! If I had known you were the owner, obviously this morning would have gone very differently. I was simply trying to maintain professional standards, and you told me I had 60 seconds to leave before you called security," Travis interrupted quietly. "You said NFL groupies and autograph seekers weren't welcome in your showroom." The direct quotation hung in the air like an accusation. Around the showroom, employees who had witnessed the morning's confrontation exchanged glances that ranged from embarrassment to barely concealed satisfaction at seeing their managers come up. "That was clearly a misunderstanding," Thalassa said quickly. "I was protecting the business interests, ensuring that our sales team could focus on legitimate customers. If you had simply identified yourself, should I have needed to?" Travis asked. "Should any customer have to prove their worth before being treated with basic respect?" David Rodriguez stepped forward with a folder thick with documents. "Ms. Quinn, we've been reviewing the quarterly report and customer feedback data. The trends are concerning." He opened the folder, revealing printouts of online reviews, customer satisfaction surveys, and employee feedback forms. Customer ratings have dropped from 4.2 stars to 2.8 stars since you assumed the general manager position. Employee turnover has reached 40%. We have 17 formal complaints about aggressive sales tactics and intimidating management practice. Thalassa's face flushed as she realized the scope of what was being presented. "Those numbers don't tell the whole story," she protested. "I've increased quarterly revenues by 12% through improved closing techniques, and you've increased short-term revenue by damaging long-term customer relations," Sarah Chen corrected, scrolling through data on her tablet. "Repeat customer rates have fallen by 31%. Referral business is down 48%. You're burning through the dealership's reputation for temporary profit gain." Travis had remained silent during this exchange, watching Thalassa's mounting desperation with the same analytical focus he brought to studying opposing defense. Finally, he spoke. "This morning, I watched you humiliate a public works employee and his wife for asking about promotion. I saw you publicly reprimand a young salesman in front of customers. I observed a workplace culture based on fear rather than respect. I maintain professional standards," Thalassa said defensively. Luxury sales requires excellence, not arrogance," Travis interrupted. "It requires making every customer feel valued, not screening them based on their appearance or occupation." Marcus, who had been listening from across the showroom, approached hesitant. "Mr. Kelce, if I may, the employees have been trying to maintain customer service standards despite," he trailed off, clearly uncomfortable criticizing his manager directly. "Despite what, Marcus?" Travis encouraged. Marcus glanced nervously at Thalassa before continuing. "Despite policies that prioritize immediate sales over customer satisfaction. We've lost a lot of good repeat customers because they felt pressured or disrespected." "That's enough," Thalassa snapped. "Marcus, return to your station immediately." "Actually," Travis said calmly, "Marcus, I'd like you to stay. You're about to witness some important changes." The words carried unmistakable finality. Thalassa seemed to understand that her authority was not just being challenged, it was being permanently dismantled in front of the entire staff and customer base. "Mr. Kelce," she said, her voice now pleading, "I think there may be some misunderstandings about my management approach. If we could discuss this privately." "We'll definitely be discussing this," Travis replied. "But first, I want to address the staff and customers about some immediate changes." Travis Kelce stood in the center of the Premier Motors showroom, his presence commanding attention from every corner of the space. Employees gradually gathered closer, sensing that they were witnessing a pivotal moment in the dealership's history. Even customers who had initially been browsing cars now focused entirely on the unfolding drama. "For those who don't know me," Travis began, his voice carrying the natural authority of someone accustomed to leading teams under pressure. "I'm Travis Kelce. 6 months ago, I invested $12 million in Premier Motors because I believed in the potential of this business and the talent of its employees." He gestured around the showroom, his gaze taking in both the luxury vehicles and the people who sold them. "But what I observed this morning tells me that potential isn't being realized. Instead, I saw a workplace culture that prioritizes intimidation over inspiration, fear over excellence. Thalassa stood frozen beside the Mercedes display. Her earlier confidence completely evaporated. The sales staff watched with expressions ranging from hope to barely contained relief that someone was finally addressing the toxic environment they'd been enduring. "Marcus," Travis called out, "tell me about the Henderson deal that fell through this morning." Marcus glanced nervously at Thalassa before answering. They were interested in a C-Class sedan, but when we got to financing, the extended warranty requirements and the interest rate structure made the monthly payments higher than they expected. They asked about alternatives, and I tried to work with them, but he trailed off. "But what?" Travis prompted. "But our current policy is to present the financing as non-negotiable. Ms. Quinn says luxury customers should expect premium term, and if they can't afford them, they're not our target market." Travis turned to Sarah Chen. "What's our profit margin on extended warranty?" 43%, Sarah replied immediately. "Industry standard is 25 to 30%. We're pricing ourselves out of deals for excessive short-term profit. And customer retention on forced extended warranty? 12%, David Rodriguez answered from his position near the financial document. "Customers who feel pressured into add-ons rarely return for service or recommend us to others." The numbers painted a clear picture of a business strategy that prioritized immediate revenue over sustainable growth. Travis could see understanding dawning on the faces of the sales staff. They hadn't been failing at their jobs. They'd been forced to implement a flawed system. "Here's what's going to change immediately," Travis announced. "First, we're implementing a customer-first sales approach. Every person who walks through these doors deserves respectful treatment, regardless of their appearance, occupation, or initial budget." He looked directly at Thalassa as he continued. "Second, we're ending the practice of mandatory add-ons and non-negotiable financing terms. Our goal is to find solutions that work for customers, not to maximize profit on individual transactions." "Mr. Kelce," Thalassa interjected desperately, "those policies were designed to maintain our premium brand positioning. If we start accommodating every budget-conscious customer, we'll build long-term relationships that generate sustainable revenue." Travis finished. "The couple you dismissed this morning, the public works employee and his wife, they were looking at a $47,000 vehicle. Even if we had worked with them on financing terms, that's still a substantial sale and 2 customers who might have returned for their next purchase." Marcus nodded enthusiastically. "That's exactly what I tried to explain to the Hendersons. They weren't asking for charity. They just wanted to understand their options. From now on," Travis continued, "sales staff are empowered to work with customers to find mutually beneficial solutions. We're not a volume, but we're not going to alienate quality customers with arrogant attitude." James Mitchell stepped forward with additional documentation. "Ms. Quinn, we've also reviewed your employment contract and the circumstances of your hiring. There are some concerning patterns that need to be addressed immediately." Thalassa's composure finally cracked completely. "Mr. Kelce, I understand you may have concerns about specific incidents, but my overall performance has improved this dealership's profitability significantly. If we could discuss this privately." "The profitability improvements came at the expense of the business's reputation, employee morale," Sarah Chen interjected. "Short-term gains that damage long-term sustainability aren't improvement, they're mistakes." Travis approached Thalassa directly, his tone remaining professional but carrying unmistakable finality. "This morning, you made assumptions about my worth based on my appearance. You threatened to call security to remove a potential customer. You publicly humiliated an employee in front of clients. These aren't isolated mistakes. They represent a fundamental misunderstanding of what this business should be." "I was protecting the dealership's image," Thalassa protested weakly. "You were projecting your own insecurities onto customers and employees," Travis replied. "Excellence doesn't come from intimidation. It comes from empowering people to do their best work in an environment of mutual respect." David Rodriguez presented Travis with a tablet showing financial projections. "Based on current trends, continuing with the existing management approach would result in a 28% revenue decline over the next 18 months. Customer dissatisfaction and employee turnover compound." "What are you saying?" Thalassa asked, though her voice suggested she already understood. "I'm saying that effective immediately, you're no longer the general manager of Premier Motors Kansas City. Travis announced. James will handle the details of your departure, including the terms of your separation agreement. The words hit the showroom like a thunderclap. Several employees exchanged glances of obvious relief, while customers who had been listening began to murmur among themselves about the unprecedented drama they were witnessing. "You can't just fire me," Thalassa said, desperation creeping into her voice. "I have a contract, performance metrics, which include customer satisfaction benchmarks that you've consistently failed to meet," James Mitchell replied, opening his briefcase to retrieve additional documents. "Your contract includes provisions for termination based on failure to maintain service standards and workplace culture requirements." As the reality of her situation settled in, Thalassa made one final attempt to salvage her position. "Mr. Kelce, I understand there may have been misunderstandings today, but surely we can work together to address any concern. I'm willing to modify my management approach." "The time for modifications was before you created a toxic workplace culture," Travis replied. "Before you started treating customers like inconveniences and employees like adversaries." He turned to address the gathered staff. "Marcus, I'm promoting you to interim general manager while we conduct a proper search for permanent leadership. Your first priority is rebuilding relationships with employees and customers." Marcus looked stunned. "Mr. Kelce, I appreciate the confidence, but I'm not sure I'm qualified. You demonstrated more customer service instinct in 5 minutes this morning than some people show in 5 years," Travis replied. "You'll have full support from our management team as you learn the administrative aspect." As security personnel arrived to escort Thalassa from the premise, a final irony that wasn't lost on anyone present, Travis addressed the remaining staff and customers. "To our employees, you're the foundation of this business. Excellence starts with treating each other with respect and supporting each other's success. To our customers, you deserve better than what you experienced here today, and I personally guarantee that's what you'll receive going forward." The transformation was immediate and visible. Employees stood straighter, spoke more confidently, and began approaching customers with renewed enthusiasm. The atmosphere in the showroom shifted from tension to optimism. But Travis knew that real change would take time, commitment, and careful rebuilding of everything Thalassa had damaged. The reckoning was complete, but the real work was just beginning. 3 months later, the morning sun streamed through the spotless windows of Premier Motors Kansas City, illuminating a showroom that looked identical to before but felt completely transformed. The same luxury vehicles occupied the marble floors, but the energy surrounding them had fundamentally changed. Travis Kelce stood near the BMW display, watching Marcus, now the confirmed general manager, patiently explaining financing options to an elderly couple. The conversation was unhurried, respectful, and focused entirely on finding solutions that worked for the customers rather than maximizing profit margin. "The extended warranty is optional," Marcus was saying, "but let me explain what it covers so you can make an informed decision. If it doesn't feel right for your situation, we can structure the deal without it." The couple exchanged grateful glances. This was the kind of interaction that had become standard since the management change, a customer service philosophy that prioritized relationships over transactions. "Mr. Kelce?" Sarah Chen approached with her tablet, displaying the latest quarterly report. "The numbers are in." Travis reviewed the data with satisfaction. Customer satisfaction ratings had climbed from 2.8 stars to 4.6 stars. Employee turnover had dropped to 8%, well below industry average. Most importantly, despite eliminating aggressive sales tactics, revenue had increased by 15% as repeat customers and referrals drove sustainable growth. "The Henderson family came back last week," Marcus reported, joining their conversation. "They bought the C-Class they originally looked at, plus referred 2 other families. That's 3 sales from 1 positive experience." It was exactly the outcome Travis had predicted. Treating customers well created more business than intimidating them ever could. The transformation hadn't been without challenges. 5 employees who had thrived under Thalassa's aggressive culture had chosen to leave, finding the new emphasis on customer service incompatible with their sales style. But they'd been replaced by people who understood that excellence came from expertise and respect, not pressure and intimidation. "There's something else," Sarah said, scrolling to another section of her report. The story about what happened here has become a business school case study. Harvard Business Review wants to interview you about transforming toxic workplace culture. Travis smiled wryly. The viral video of his confrontation with Thalassa had generated millions of views and sparked countless discussions about customer service, workplace leadership, and the importance of authentic corporate culture. But more importantly, it had sent a clear message to his other business ventures about the standards he expected. Any word from the other dealership locations? He asked. All three have requested management training based on the changes we implemented here, David Rodriguez reported. Employee satisfaction surveys show significant improvement across the network. As they talked, Travis noticed a familiar face entering the showroom. The public works employee and his wife from that first day, the couple Thalassa had dismissed so rudely, were walking hand in hand toward the Mercedes display. Marcus immediately approached them with a warm smile. "Mr. and Mrs. Patterson, good to see you again. How's the C-Class treating you?" "Beautifully," Mrs. Patterson replied. "Actually, we're here because my husband got a promotion, and we're thinking about upgrading to something larger." "That's wonderful news," Marcus said genuinely. "Let's look at some options that might work for your family." Travis watched the interaction with deep satisfaction. The Pattersons had returned not because of aggressive sales tactics or pressure, but because they'd been treated with dignity and respect. This was how business should work, creating value for customers while building sustainable success for the company. His phone buzzed with a text message from his agent about an upcoming Chiefs game, reminding him that in a few hours he'd be back on the football field where his performance was measured in yards gained and touchdowns scored. But this business venture had taught him something equally valuable about leadership. That true success came from elevating others, not diminishing them. "Mr. Kelce?" A young voice interrupted his thoughts. He turned to see a woman in her early 20s, professionally dressed, but clearly nervous. "I'm Jennifer Walsh," she said. "I just graduated from business school, and I saw the story about what you did here. I was wondering if you might have any entry-level positions available. I want to learn customer service the right way." Travis exchanged glances with Marcus, who nodded enthusiastically. "We always have room for people who understand that customers and employees deserve respect," Travis replied. "Talk to Marcus about our training program." As Jennifer walked away with Marcus to discuss opportunities, Travis felt a profound sense of accomplishment that rivaled any Super Bowl victory. He'd taken a failing business and transformed it not through financial manipulation or cost-cutting, but by implementing the fundamental principle that people, customers, and employees alike performed best when treated with dignity and respect. The viral video of Thalassa's dismissal had generated millions of views, but more importantly, it had attracted quality employees who wanted to work in an environment based on excellence rather than intimidation. Applications had increased by 400%, with candidates specifically mentioning the company's commitment to positive workplace culture. "Sir?" Marcus approached with paperwork. "The corporate culture training program you requested is ready for implementation across all 4 locations. We've also received interest from 12 other dealership networks wanting to license our customer service protocol." Travis nodded approvingly. What had started as a personal investment was becoming a model for how automotive sales could be conducted with integrity and still achieve superior results. His phone rang, his mother calling from Cleveland. "Travis, I saw that video again on the news," she said when he answered. "I'm proud of you for standing up for those workers and customers. That's how your father and I raised." "Thanks, Mom," Travis replied, watching the bustling showroom where employees worked with genuine enthusiasm and customers browsed without fear of high-pressure tactics. Sometimes doing the right thing is also the smart thing. After ending the call, Travis took one final look around the transformed dealership. The Henderson family was completing paperwork on their new vehicle, clearly delighted with their experience. The Pattersons were test driving a larger Mercedes with Marcus, who was patiently explaining safety features to their teenage daughter. Jennifer was shadowing a senior salesperson, learning how to build relations rather than apply pressure. 3 months ago, this had been a toxic environment where success came at the expense of human dignity. Today, it was proof that businesses could thrive by elevating everyone they touch: employees, customers, and community. As Travis headed toward the exit, preparing to leave for Chiefs practice, he paused at the spot where Thalassa had delivered her ultimatum about security removing him. A small plaque now marked the location, reading, Excellence is treating every person with respect, regardless of appearance or assumptions. Management. The irony wasn't lost on anyone who worked there. The woman who had tried to kick out the owner for not looking wealthy enough had been replaced by a culture that valued every person who walked through the doors. Travis's phone buzzed with a text from his business manager. ESPN wants to interview you about the intersection of sports success and business leadership. Interested? He typed back, only if we can film it at the dealership. The real story is about the people who work here, not me. Outside, the Kansas City skyline stretched toward the horizon, and Travis could hear the distant sounds of Arrowhead Stadium, where he'd be playing in just a few days. But this quiet business victory felt just as meaningful as any touchdown reception. Proof that success in any field came from the same fundamental principle: respect, excellence, and the courage to stand up for what's right. The transformation of Premier Motors Kansas City was complete, but its impact would ripple outward for years to come, inspiring other businesses, other leaders, and other athletes to understand that true champions elevate everyone around them. As Travis drove toward the stadium for practice, he smiled at the memory of Thalassa's shocked face when she realized she'd kicked out the owner of the dealership. But more than revenge or vindication, what satisfied him most was knowing that dozens of employees now went to work each day in an environment where they could succeed without compromising their integrity. That was the real victory, not the viral video or the business school case study, but the simple truth that treating people right wasn't just morally correct. It was the most effective path to lasting success. The moment a car dealership manager kicked out Travis Kelce would be remembered as the day everything changed, not just for one business, but for everyone who understood that excellence and respect weren't opposing forces, but the foundation of genuine achievement.